Satan has always had the best tunes. Now, unfortunately, these things, it's a very negative presentation, but the thing is, the Bible tells us to look into these things and expose them. And that's what we're attempting to do here, because so many people are ignorant of these things. And that's why they allow themselves to listen to this music, especially the youth of today. So even though we're not to dwell on these things, as the Bible tells us, but it is good to know these things so you can choose the right music for yourself or your children. He goes on to say, music can inspire people to murder or violence, can inspire them to shoot a mall full of people. So tell me, does music have power? Yes, it does. And as we know from the Columbine massacres that took place, those two boys that actually caused those killings, they were listening to their favorite rock band. I can't remember what the name of the rock band was called, but the lyrics to all of this rock band's songs were about shooting in schools. And on their websites, they posted all these lyrics before they actually did the shooting. So who was really leading them? I wonder. So we need to address a couple of questions today, because we see that there is a lot more that meets the eye that actually goes on in this industry. So some of the questions we're going to be asking ourselves is, who started the modern music industry and what was their agenda? So let's take a look. Does anyone here know who started the modern music industry? Bill Haley? Not quite. Well, this is the gentleman here. And you think to yourself, hang on a sec, that looks like a pretty old photo. Well, you're right, it is an old photo. And that was taken, I'm pretty sure, before the 1940s. And this guy doesn't exactly look like some modern day record producer, although I have seen a lot of the rap artists these days starting to dress that way, but that's another story. But this gentleman is called Aleister Crowley. Now, Aleister Crowley actually had a lot of agendas. And we're going to take a brief look at these agendas because, well, you'll notice why in a second, that how the music industry and Aleister Crowley link up. It's rather interesting. Now, what was Aleister Crowley responsible for? These are just a few brief things that he basically helped out in, you could say. He was the creator of the modern New Age movement. He started modern Satanism in America. He created the 60s drug revolution, created the women's liberation movement, founded the homosexual revolution, and he was the inspiration behind various New Age religious groups. Now, one man responsible for so many things. I wonder how he got involved in all this stuff. And we're going to take a look at some of the things he has to say. Because when you hear it for yourself and you see the links between all these things that he's done, that's when you really begin to discover who was really behind everything he was teaching. All right. Israel Regardie, the Eye of the Triangle, in 1986 said, "I say to hell with Christianity. I will build me a new heaven and a new earth. I want blasphemy, murder, rape, revolution, anything bad." So is this guy a nice gentleman? No, he wasn't. So why on earth would someone make a quote like that? Or why would he this Israel guy, he's quoting from one of Aleister Crowley's writings. So why does Aleister Crowley say things like this? What could have led a man to be so evil, as we would say? It's interesting because Crowley taught that one could become a genius in music through practicing his Satanism. It's very interesting, a genius in music. Now, we had a look at last time how all these artists, some of them actually got on stage and said before they started playing, they would kind of mellow out, and then sometimes after their concert, they would watch themselves on TV and they wouldn't even recognize themselves playing. So is there something more to being a genius in music? Is there a power within certain types of music that we need to be very careful of? Well, let's ask the man himself. Why did he go in the direction that he did? He says, "Indeed, my falling away from grace was not occasioned by any intellectual qualms. I accepted the theology of the Plymouth Brethren. In fact, I could hardly conceive of the existence of people who might doubt it. I simply went to Satan's side, and to this hour I cannot tell why." Wow. He goes on to say, and gives us a reason exactly why. "I was opposed to an omnipotent God. I was not content to believe in a personal devil and serve him in the ordinary sense of the word. I wanted to get hold of him personally and become his chief of staff." So this was not a man that just slipped away or just made a mistake in his choices and never really heard the gospel message. This was a man who knew of God, he knew of Satan, but he made a very direct choice in who he wanted to follow. And we can tell by his own writings here that he was a man who was almost power hungry because he wanted to become the devil's chief of staff. And if we know anything about Satan's kingdom, it's always about trying to climb to the top of the ladder and climb over whoever you want to climb over to get there. He goes on to say, "Lucifer is my own guardian angel, and the devil Satan, the serpent Satan, is not the enemy of man, but who made gods of our race, knowing good and evil. He bade know thyself and taught initiation." Now, is some of this language starting to sound a bit familiar? Are you picking something maybe in the Bible? It's interesting, he said he made gods of our race. What was that first original deception that Lucifer did in the garden? That you will become like a god, in the sense. And this man was caught up in this deception. And because of it, he became a very powerful man in Satan's kingdom. So, what exactly did this man go on to teach, and what were some of his things about? Here's a little quote from his own book, Magic. He says, "Crowley's magic is a doctrine and a technique for establishing contact with extraterrestrial entities, spirits, demons. The whole of Crowley's doctrine is based on the Book of the Law, in which the future of humanity, the establishment of a new order, is outlined." Man, what is this new order? What is he talking about here? As we saw in all of our last presentations, we saw how all these artists out there were all involved in seances and witchcraft and so many different spiritualistic aspects of the occult and New Age movement. But the question is, why are they all involved in this? And how are they all getting involved in it kind of together? And to find the answer to this, all you have to do is listen to a lot of the lyrics from the 60s and 70s and 80s. And you will find that a good 80 to 90% of all the rock artists of that era would sing about this gentleman. And the reason being is because so many people actually worshipped his philosophy. And because he actually was involved in creating the whole 60s revolution, he had all these followers from that era because he helped basically establish all of that, and we're going to have a look at how he did that in a second. But that is exactly how all these artists of our time and back in that era have all got involved in all this New Age stuff, because they all started to get involved in his teachings, and word of mouth went around, oh, this guy's got some excellent teachings, and he condones drugs, and he does all this stuff. And it was a method for them to basically, after reading these things, they got a chance to then put this magic in practice and basically allow themselves to get in contact with these extraterrestrial spirits, which we know as fallen angels from heaven. And that's what his teachings are all about. And because of that, he has led thousands and thousands of people who have been involved in this to eternal destruction. And even one time I was in the city, we were